all of that information in one handy place. And my book is really very practical. It's a very short little, I ended up calling it a pocket guide because I realized it was really too short to be a full-length book, but it condenses so much information in a short space. And it also includes, anecdotes from my own life and, encouragement. I'm trying to help people realize you really aren't alone. You feel like you're alone, but you're one of millions and millions of people doing this. But in the process of doing it, you end up feeling very isolated.
We all are gonna die. 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 Why don't we help each other prepare for it? Without death, there could not be life. I'm talking about end of life conversations, conversations about the end of life. Death and dying, grief and loss, conversations about the end of life.
Hey, everybody, we want to interrupt this episode to ask for some help.
Yes, indeed. We would like to add value to our podcast for you, our beloved community, as we move into our third
How
year
cool is
of
that?
being here.
30 years. Yeah.
3 years.
Just starting our third year. We're very excited about that. So we really do. We want to add some value. And we'd love to have as many as possible of you go to our podcast notes and click on the link to take just a few minutes to do a survey for us and tell us what would make it more valuable for you. So we look
Yeah,
forward to hearing from you.
and don't hesitate. Whatever is on your heart, there's a little space there that you can add your thoughts about what you'd like to hear more about. Maybe, even if it's books or music, whatever, just
Yeah.
let us know because we are here to in support of you,
Yeah.
our listeners. So thank you so much.
Yeah.
And now back to our regularly scheduled program.
Thank you. Welcome, everyone. I am Reverend Wakil David Matthews, and today we are really excited to speak with Ann Thompson. Ann is an end-of-life doula, ordained non-sectarian priest, certified medical Reiki master and Reiki teacher, and she also publishes poetry, vignettes, and nonfiction. Ana Luisa Armendariz, my co-host, is taking her daughter to an appointment, so she might be a little bit late or she may not make it, but we will go ahead without her. We want to just, and again, be so thankful that Ann could join us today. After a 40-year career as a public health writer, editor, Ann is soon retiring to focus on her soul's true calling, to foster healing and transformation throughout the lifespan and especially at the end of life. She recently published a book under the pen name Grace Amani, The End of Life Caregivers Pocket Guide, a death doula's practical tips on caring for dying loved ones and yourself, which is available as a paperback, or ebook. And we'll certainly include the link in our podcast notes. And that's pretty much how we found you, I think. Somebody recommended your book. So really glad to have you and glad to hear about your work. And so glad you could be here today. We always like to start by just asking about when you became aware of death yourself.
Well, first of all, I would like to say thank you so much for the opportunity to talk with you. I'm very honored and touched and grateful. I also want to mention that my book is now available in audiobook as well for people that may not have the time to read a book.
Excellent. Yeah.
I gave a lot of thought to that question. I was raised in the 60s and 70s by very loving and conservative parents who felt as though it was in children's best interest to protect them from death.
Yeah.
And so I didn't really have any experience with it for a long, long time. I mean, I knew people in my family had died, but it was almost as though, when you're moving and you take a picture off the wall and there's just an empty space. It was as if people just dematerialized, and I'd never really been to any funerals. I was actually 30 years old.
Wow.
And had just started a job as director of communications for a private Jesuit prep school in the DC area. And it was and is a very close community. And within days after I started, the director of the board of trustees died suddenly of a heart attack. And my boss asked me to go with her to the viewing.
Mm.
And I was just terrified, honestly. I just had never been in that environment before. But what really impressed me was when I got there, it was so clearly a community of love and compassion, and people were there to support each other, and it was not scary.
Yeah.
Um, and strangely and ironically enough, of course, being part of that small community, I ended up finding myself going to funerals much more often than I ever expected to. Um, and one of the first quite dramatic experiences I had related to my current calling and death was while I was at this school. There was a student, Jairo Sanchez, who was a senior and had just graduated. And on the night of graduation, he went out with his friends partying and was killed in a car accident.
Wow.
And I had been at this time, around this time, feeling really called to do hands on healing. And I didn't even know what that meant, but I just somehow felt drawn to do some kind of healing with my hands, even though that was not my career at all and not my education. And when I was in the church, in the back of the chapel, it was completely full with all these people in the community. When Jairo's mom walked in the door past me, my hands started burning and tingling. And
Wow.
I felt really, I intuited that that was a sign to me that I was
Mm-hmm.
supposed to go into what I felt drawn to do. So, I did go to massage school, and there I learned Reiki, and I ultimately ended up quitting that job after about 9 years and becoming a full-time Reiki and massage therapist. And during that time, I was now in my mid-30s, I would say, mid to late 30s, um, and married. And my mom called me one day and was absolutely hysterical. And I said, "What happened?" And it turned out that her very best friend's son had just been murdered in a carjacking. And I said, I'll go with you to the funeral. So I went with her to Utah to the funeral, and I rented a car and I drove her around, and I found myself in the role of being like a mom to my mother, helping her
Yeah.
through this experience that she had always sort of insulated us from.
Right.
So that I would say were my initial experiences. And then again, due to this community that I worked at being so close, and then I ended up marrying a teacher from there. I still continue to be quite close to that community through that. Um, my husband and I adopted our daughter, and she was about, I would say, 7 or 8 when we went through this really bizarre period of about 5 or 6 years where we lost multiple friends. I think in the course of 5 to 6 years, we lost 9 or 10 friends,
Wow.
many of whom were sudden heart attacks or aneurysm or um, neurological disorders or all
Mm-hmm.
sorts of things. Got to the point where our daughter, whenever we said, "Guess what?" she said, "Who died?"
Oh my. Oh my.
So,
Yeah. Wow.
but I ended up finding myself in several of these cases actually providing a lot of hands-on support to my
Mm-hmm.
friends, and I was with them probably with 3 or 4 of them I can remember in particular. I was actually at their bedside as they were um, very, very close to dying,
Mm-hmm.
and one in particular was diagnosed with cancer that progressed so quickly, it was literally 2 weeks. So she hardly
Wow.
even had time to adjust to anything. And I went to visit her, and I was holding her hand, and she looked at me and said, "This is really happening, isn't it?"
Right. Yeah.
And I looked in her eyes, and I've had this experience several times since then, and it's really profound. I looked in her eyes, and I felt this deep sense of peace. Like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's happening and it's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay. I just didn't feel panicked. I didn't feel scared. And I could just sort of see her whole body relax. I didn't even need to say anything. Just when we locked eyes, it was sort of like there was something inchoate, something nonverbal that just passed between us that it was like, oh, yeah, it's going to be okay.
Yeah, yeah. That's really a beautiful story and a really beautiful reminder to all of us that there's much more than meets the eye, and there's
Yeah.
much more going on that we can feel and we can touch. We've talked to people who've had experiences of in communications with people after they've died,
Yes.
and certainly Reiki and that kind of hands-on healing thing where you're just really remembering that we have very limited senses really, and we
Mhm.
don't know all the things that go on beyond the normal senses or beyond the scientific objectivity, if you will.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so great. I'm so glad you could share that with us. So as you're thinking about those experiences, how has that led you to the work you're doing now? How's that affected your life in general?
Well, it certainly, braids in very closely with the Reiki I've been doing for over 30 years, and when I practice the Reiki, it gets me in that space, much like meditation, where you're sort of, aware of sensing it in a different way. You're not as, um, tuned into the body. Like, when I did massage for 9 years, I knew what I was doing. I was in my hands. I knew where the attachments and origins were. I knew, why I was doing what I was doing and what it would achieve. With Reiki, there's so much more mystery.
Yeah.
You open yourself and allow yourself to be, a vehicle for this mystery to flow through you when you're sort of present to it. You're not doing anything, you're witnessing it.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so there's that similar sense of mystery when I'm practicing Reiki as there is when I've been around people who are dying.
Mm-hmm.
And of course that's I mean, I have to qualify that by saying I've always been, I guess, blessed enough to be around people who are dying of natural causes for the most part.
Okay.
I haven't been, at the bedside of someone who has died violently or who is in great deal of pain or suffering. And, we can talk later on, of course, about hospice. I think that hospice and palliative care are absolutely key to a
Yeah.
peaceful death. But um, I guess after I had worked with so many friends who were either, very severely ill or indeed terminally ill, when my father was diagnosed with sorry, not pancreatic, esophageal cancer, when he was 88, I knew that I would, be there every
Mm-hmm.
step of the
Mm-hmm.
way, and I thought, well, I should know what I'm doing. I've been intuiting it so far, but I haven't actually studied it. So I took a course. It was an intensive weekend course in end of life doula training that ended up with a certificate that was taught by the same woman that I learned medical Reiki with.
Mm-hmm.
And it was such a gift because when dad was, actively dying, he was fortunate enough to die at home with hospice in home. And it was such a blessing to me because I wasn't scared. I knew what was happening. When all of the
Yeah.
physiological changes happened, I could explain to my brother and to my mother, this is what's happening. This is what the body's doing. In fact, I was the one to say to mom, he's dying. And she said,
Yeah.
oh, she didn't realize it.
Well.
She didn't really know. She just thought
Yeah.
he was going through a bad patch. And I said, no,
Mm-hmm.
it's actively happening now.
Mm-hmm.
And that was actually a lovely gift because the three of us could experience that without panic, without confusion. We were able to support each other. It was just a really beautiful, very gentle experience.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Great. Yeah. A couple things that are really important that I really want to reemphasize for the audience. And we actually have another person coming on next week. We'll be interviewing her next week, and it'll be the week or two, I'm not sure, after yours is aired, probably in December sometime at this point. But she and I were just talking today about, and Ana Luisa and I were just talking as well about the importance of hospice and the
Mhm,
importance of palliative care
mhm.
and how people tend to shy away from it or be afraid of it
Yeah,
because it seems like if you go on hospice, you're admitting that you're dying, right?
right,
And
right.
or if you accept palliative care, you're saying I give up, and none of
Mhm,
those are true. And
absolutely.
what is true is that those are both incredibly wonderful, skilled, beautiful people angels
Yeah.
is the way I think of them,
True,
who
absolutely.
are just, they know what they're doing, and doulas as well. That's the other thing I want to point
Mhm,
out to our audience
mhm,
is that
mhm.
there death doulas have become a thing now. There's a lot more of them around,
Yeah.
and they are such a blessing to a family before hospice and after death. They can
Mhm,
take all of that part and really, just like a birth doula, they can really walk you through, or a midwife. I've heard death doulas call themselves death midwives. It's
mhm.
a very similar thing. You're really, because of the knowledge that they have and the experiences they have and the skills that they have, they're able to be there for you, your whole family, your whole community,
Yeah,
and really help you walk through this entire process from beginning to end and past the end. So thank you for bringing those up, and just want to really re-emphasize all of that for our audience, because
yeah,
we've been
yeah,
talking a lot about that,
yeah,
and people who've
and
avoided it, right?
and people often get palliative care and hospice care confused,
Yeah,
and
that's
they
right.
think the thing is palliative care can be brought in at any point
Yeah.
in, the process of any condition, any
Hmm.
illness that has, pain or anxiety or any kind of, adjunctive
Yeah.
problems above and beyond the illness itself and related to the illness. And you can bring in palliative care at any point.
Yeah.
And of course, palliative care is part of hospice care.
Hmm.
But for instance, the hospice nurse that we worked with when my dad was, and hospice can be the last 6 months. And if you rally, you can be taken off hospice and put back
Hmm.
into only palliative care. But when my dad um, was no longer able to eat because of his esophageal cancer, he had to have a stomach tube.
Mm.
And the hospice nurse was so wonderful at coaching us and showing us how to use it. And she was just fabulous. And,
Yeah.
she had like 2 children of her own, and she would come in the middle of the night if we needed her. It was just wonderful. These people are really, you're right. They're like angels. I can't
They
say
are.
enough good things about hospice
Yeah.
and palliative
Yeah.
care people.
Yeah.
And then also, and I explain this in my book, I do distinguish quite a bit between the two so people understand the difference in all these roles.
Hmm. Hmm.
But an end of life doula really is a non-medical companion, advocate, comforter, information resource. They're just
Hmm.
they can kind of um, be a liaison among all those things between the
Yeah.
family and the patient, between the patient and the clinical team, between the clinical team and the caregivers. I mean, they can really
Yeah.
live in all those worlds, but they
Yeah.
just are
Yeah.
not medical.
Yeah. And still not that well known, but they're starting to be. And so
Mhm.
we've promoted them a lot on our podcast. And so
Yeah,
I
yeah.
really know that it's a valuable resource for people, and really should pay attention to it. And as you mentioned, the hospice people, I think somebody just recently told me that statistically, people only are in hospice for 2 weeks
Yes,
on average, and they could be in there. They could have 6 months of incredibly brilliant, wonderful, angel-like care,
exactly,
instead of waiting till the last minute. And we
exactly.
really encourage that. So thanks for
Yeah, for
bringing that up.
sure.
We're going to keep emphasizing that and hope
Yeah,
people get that
yeah.
message. So it's
Mhm.
really important. Well, tell us more about the work you've done, your book, and some of the work that you're doing now.
Well, I have done Reiki in addition to and around my day job for all these years, and I am now kind of on the off ramp toward retirement. I'm easing
Hmm.
out of my day job and focusing much more on the practicing of Reiki, the teaching of Reiki, and particularly, I'm feeling particularly drawn to integrating Reiki into the end of life experience for the caregivers as well as
Hmm.
for the person who is at the end of their lives. Um, and so, right now, I wrote this book actually before I started cutting back on my day job. I just felt really compelled about a year or so ago to do it. I didn't even know then why, but now I kind of understand um, that there's such a need for people to understand that when they take care of someone else who is either chronically ill, terminally ill, of advanced age, maybe has dementia or is dying, as caregivers, they often feel, and I can speak from my own experience as well, that you
Yeah.
end up feeling overwhelmed. You feel exhausted, you feel isolated, you don't know where to turn, you wish you had more information, but you don't even have the time or energy to find that information. And so after providing care for both my parents at the end of their lives, they've both passed, and again, as I said, for my friends, I realized that there is such a need for caregivers to have um, all of that information in one handy place. And my book is really very practical. It's a very
Mhm.
short little, I ended up calling it a pocket guide because I
Yeah.
realized it was really too short to be a full length book, but it condenses so much information in a short space.
Mhm.
And it also includes, anecdotes from my own life and, encouragement. I'm trying to help people realize you really aren't alone. You feel like you're
Mhm.
alone, but you're one of millions and millions of people doing this. But
Yeah.
in the process of doing it, you end up feeling very isolated. So my hope is that not only with the book, but with my work as a Reiki practitioner and with speaking to people and networking with people, I'll be able to get the word out. And I'm actually working very closely with a wonderful man I just love. Alejandro Maciel is his name, and he is the former managing editor of LA Times Espanol, and he has
Mm.
translated my book into Spanish.
Beautiful.
And yeah, and we're just about to publish it together, and we're trying to reach out to the Latino community because, and I knew this from work that I had done as a writer for this organization. Compassionate Choices is a
Mm.
wonderful national nonprofit that
Yeah, we've
advocates for
I
end
think
of
I
life
think we've
patient
had
care.
yeah, I think we've
Yeah,
had people on from there. Yeah.
yeah, it's a
Beautiful group.
wonderful organization, beautiful work. And one
Yeah.
of the women that I worked with there was very networked into the Latino community, and I learned from her that um, in Latino and other communities of families from other cultures, very often they feel like they shouldn't ask for help, that the
Mm.
family's duty is to be there no matter how much sacrifice you have to make, no matter how hard it is. That's your duty,
Yeah.
particularly if it's your parents or your relatives, but even for friends and members of your faith community or whatever.
Mhm.
And that's lovely. But if you don't have a support network and if you exhaust yourself, you're not
Yeah.
of
You're
any
not
use to the person you're trying to support. So Alejandro is feeling really strongly that this meets a huge need in the immigrant community. So he and I are
Mhm.
working in together to try to do actual outreach and make it more of a community program, not just a book.
Oh, wow. That's so great. So important.
Yeah,
Thanks.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Wonderful. Yeah, I love that. Well, just in general, the immigrant community needs a lot of
Oh my God.
assistance and prayer right now. But
Oh God, it's so
yeah,
true. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So that's really wonderful. And have you considered other immigrant communities such as Asian or African or any of those? I know that's a big lift at this point, but
Yeah,
there are
yeah. No,
certainly those.
I definitely would love to reach out more. And again, Compassion Choices has these wonderful uh sort of like sub community groups where they're reaching out to the African
Hmm.
American community. They're reaching out to the disabled community. They're reaching out to all sorts of different communities to bring out the message of end of life patient advocacy and
Yeah, caregiving.
options and
Great.
compassionate
Yeah. In
caregiving.
our
Yeah, yeah.
In our newsletter that's coming out soon, the beginning of October, we'll be announcing a new book by one of our friends who came on, Pamela Bellier. Well, she didn't write it, but she is fostering it, if you will. She created what's called the Grievers Library,
Oh,
and
that's wonderful.
in the Seattle area, we have 7 or 8 or 9 book libraries, small book libraries, that have just grief and loss books in them and they're categorized by what kind of grief. But they
Hmm.
have just put together, with the help of a master's student at the University of Washington, a resource page for Mandarin speakers.
Oh,
And so,
fantastic.
yeah, so we're going to publish that in our podcast. I mean, in our newsletter, to let people know about that. So,
That's wonderful.
yeah, I just love that kind of work is going on. That we're paying attention to the fact that even as we've all grown up in this kind of settler colonial hegemony, that
Yeah.
that the white people are all that matter, and we know so much more
Mhm.
is needing to
Mhm.
be done
Oh, for
for
sure.
everyone else. So thanks so much
Absolutely.
for that work.
Yeah.
Really appreciate that.
Yeah, and
Um,
it's, especially needed right now because that community is literally under attack.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
so sad. Such a sad thing. We try not to get depressed and
I know.
worn out by that, and keep moving, keep doing our
Yep.
work. So,
Yep.
well, that kind of does a good segue into what kind of challenges have you had, or do you have in your work, or in sharing it?
Um, right now, I would, to be totally frank, my challenge is trying to extricate myself from the day job world so I can focus myself more on my spiritual work.
Mm,
Uh, my husband and I are getting close to retirement age, and I will be so thrilled when we can finally retire so I can do this full time because I've been keeping a foot in both worlds really for 30 years. And I
mhm.
feel sort of like, the Janus faced creature that has two
Right.
identities. I've got this one identity as a science writer, and I'm very practical, and I do editing and proofreading, and very rational, and I can document everything and do the references on PubMed and all the rest. But then the other part of me is very woo woo. And to me,
Right.
my dad was a nuclear engineer, and he always used to say that he didn't understand why people thought that faith and science were a conflict.
Yeah.
Because he said, the more you pursue science, the more you realize the mystery and the wonder.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And some of our most um, skillful, or I don't know, skilled is a word, but most beautifully knowledgeable physicists and scientists
Hmm.
have said the same thing, that
Absolutely.
there's no difference, and that we find ourselves, the more we explore science and the more we dig deep, we find
Yeah,
ourselves more and more in the spiritual realm of
yeah,
recognizing that those feelings and those connections and those energy things that we consider woo woo, and
yep,
I've certainly been guilty of that myself, um, are real. I mean, are real,
absolutely.
or part of the mystery. Like, what do we know?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And
Um,
I think actually the faster our science progresses now with AI and everything else, the closer we're going to get to that
yeah,
realization that it's
yeah.
all the same thing. And when I teach Reiki level 2, um, eh, one of the hard things for people to get their heads around, and it was certainly true for me when I first learned it, is that you can actually send the healing energy across time and space.
Mm,
And
mhm.
so when I try to explain the
Hmm.
context in which that might make sense, I give my students a little, kind of quick primer on quantum physics and zero
Yeah.
point field, and yeah, the fact that two electrons that have been connected, once they're separated, no matter how far apart they are, you can do something to one and the other one feels it immediately. So,
Mhm, mhm.
our science is actually starting to show us a context in which healing and miracles is completely, they're all,
Yeah, yeah, and
plausible. It's not
yeah,
weird.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, and I'll even go so far as to say, even if it is weird, what do we know? You
Right.
know,
Right. Right. Exactly.
we have a very, very limited spectrum of understanding or feeling and senses, and what I do know and what I've experienced, and sounds like you have as well, is that these things happen.
They do.
That people do
They
feel
do.
this. It does happen, and people
Hmm.
connect in this way. So,
Hmm. Hmm.
if we don't know how to prove it scientifically, so what? You
Right.
know?
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, I really appreciate that too. That's really, really well put. Um, so I want to keep track here. We're doing good on time. And is there anything that frightened you about ending your life, or the end of life for you, or other
Yeah.
people in your lives?
Um, the only thing that I feel any concern about is I don't want to suffer, and I don't want the people I love to suffer. I don't want
Yeah,
anybody to suffer, actually.
right.
It's very easy to, believe in spirit when your body isn't hurting.
Hmm.
But,
Absolutely.
I've seen people go through a lot of suffering, and it's very hard to stay focused outside the body when the body needs all the time and attention and energy. So,
Yeah,
that's again getting back to the palliative care and the hospice care. That's where those
exactly.
providers are absolutely godsends because they
Hmm.
really do help you manage that
Yeah,
physical
yeah,
physical part.
yeah. And the
Um,
doulas, yeah,
yeah,
they
and
can
the
just really
doulas,
bring you that
right?
connection.
The
Yeah.
comfort and connection, and other than that, I really don't have
Hmm.
a lot of fear or dread, and I also feel like, I wanna live longer, but if I don't, I've had a really wonderful life,
Yeah, yeah,
you know?
yeah.
So,
Beautiful.
yeah.
That's really true. It's in a way, I think both Ana Luisa and I have said a couple of times that it's kind of our curiosity, it's like, well,
Exactly. Yeah,
it's one of those big mysteries that we really want to know what
yeah,
happens.
yeah.
We don't get
I
to do it.
just in August, I spent 5 days in Chicago as volunteering as an energy healer for the people that were working at and attending the International Association for Near-Death Studies
Oh
annual
yeah,
conference,
yeah.
IANDS. That was amazing.
Hmm.
I can't recommend the conference enough. It was fascinating, uplifting, the science is mind-blowing,
Yeah.
the people are so loving and
Hmm.
open, and there is such a huge body of evidence now
Yeah.
that is
Exactly.
consistent across a variety of experiences
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
people have when they have a near-death experience and come back.
Hmm.
Um, that IANDS is actually advocating to try to get near-death experiences incorporated into the diagnostic and statistical manual. So it's actually a
Mm.
code that
Wow.
doctors can use so that
Wow.
they can take it
Yeah.
seriously and document it better.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
love that.
Yeah. It
One of
was
our
really cool.
early one of our early guests was a woman who'd had a near-death experience in her 20s, and she's in her 70s now. And she said when she had that experience, she was working in a psych hospital with schizophrenic patients,
Mhm.
and she wouldn't tell anybody
Right.
because she assumed that she'd be put in the hospital,
Right.
as you know. And so, yeah, we've had people from IANS come on and speak to us as well, and it's just as she said at the time when we talked to her, it's such a relief for her and for people like her to know that this is not something she made up and that it really
Exactly.
truly happened as she remembers it. It was kind of humorous. She said at one point she was, you know, doing that dialogue, which of course
Yeah.
probably happened in seconds, but felt like a long time. And
Mhm.
the dialogue was the person, whoever was talking to her said, okay, you need to make a decision. We don't have a lot of time here, and so,
Yeah.
it's just so
Yeah.
beautiful that again, as you say, that we're seeing the science backing up what all of us, many of us anyway, on the mystic path or in that realm of thinking and feeling, have felt was true. So, and many people on
Yes.
the spiritual path. So,
Yeah.
yeah, wonderful. Thank you so much. That's great. Yeah, a couple more things. One is, how do you resource yourself? I mean, when you're feeling this overwhelm, like we spoke about earlier,
Mhm. Mhm.
do you have practices or things that you do to take care of yourself and help yourself? Is just we like to collect these as ideas for our
Mhm. Mhm.
audience. Yeah.
Mhm. I do. When I was taking care of my dad, I basically kept an ongoing journal
Mm.
of not only because, I needed to know what was going on with his health and his medication and questions to ask the doctor, but I also incorporated in that journal my own feelings, my own
Uh,
emotions. And as a creative writer for many decades, I've done sort of real time creative nonfiction where
mm,
as soon as I hear a conversation, I'll write it down and start narrating it as if I were
mm,
writing it creatively. So I had done this 8 years ago, 7 years ago with dad, and I'd put it away. I forgot about
mm-hmm,
it completely.
mm-hmm,
And I just found it recently, and it brought back not only the experiences themselves and, um, how helpful it was to write creatively during that time. But I had forgotten that I actually wrote poems during that time. I had dreams that were very profound. I had all
mm,
these incredible experiences, and I just kept writing them down and writing them down and writing them down. And the writing helped me at the time
sure.
to cope with the stress. But it's also ended up being an amazing resource now to go back to and learn from. And,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, journaling is a really important tool.
yeah,
We
yeah,
another thing that will be in the newsletter is a new class starting up with Mirabai Star, where she works specifically on journaling and journaling around grief and loss. And
yes,
I've heard that over and over again. In fact, I think the last person we just talked to said the same thing, that they, besides getting out and being in nature, which is the number one answer,
absolutely. Absolutely.
just
Yeah. And
being able to journal and write things and keep track of them. That sounds
absolutely.
like you might have a new book in there.
I think so. But the other thing I should add, though, is that it was a whole different experience with my mother because my mother had um, mental illness for a long time before she developed dementia, and then she had dementia for about 5 years. So
Oh, yeah.
the amount of care, time, and attention that she required was so intensive that when my mom passed, I didn't want to write. I didn't want to think about it. I didn't want to talk about it. I just gave myself permission to not feel anything.
Right.
I started to berate myself and say, "Why aren't you feeling sad?" Right? And my brother said, "Well, it's been the long goodbye. We've been saying goodbye to her for years now, so that's part of it. But the
Yeah.
other part is you need to give yourself permission to cope in whatever way works for you in that moment.
Sure.
It might be not talking to anybody at all. It might be
Yeah.
not doing anything but curling up with a blanket and, listening to music.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It varies each time.
Yeah. Yeah. I spoke to someone who had similar experience. Their mom had been, well, it kind of begun feeling into dementia 20 years ago. And then they spent
Mm,
15 years with her, first of all, not recognizing them, and second being
yeah.
10 years in a facility.
Yes.
And they were feeling nothing. The biggest feeling they were having was relief
Exactly.
and guilt over feeling
Exactly.
relieved.
Exactly.
And I was just like, that's perfectly normal, and that you should just embrace that, So
Exactly.
yeah, as you
Exactly.
said, you should feel all of them, feel all the
Right.
feels, and
Right.
really honor all of them. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate your time. Is there anything you wish I would asked you that you'd like to share before we finish?
Um, how can I get in touch with you again? I'm really enjoying talking to you, and I'd love to be more a part of your community. I'm really interested in it.
Great. Well, there is the website for the podcast, and when we and you can I can also send you my regular email, and actually that's where you've got my email because it was how you got uh,
Yes.
the mention of or the invitation. So
Yeah.
you're welcome to write anything to me there, and we can have a
Okay.
conversation. I would love to do that and continue
Yeah.
this conversation. Yeah. And yeah, if you write another book, we'll definitely post it in our newsletter. I realize I'm talking about our next newsletter when it's going to be probably posted in October. I mean, our newsletter's in October, and this is going to probably not show up till December. So apologize to everybody. Make sure you read our old newsletters as well as the new ones. And so yeah, we like to just at this point thank you and say goodbye, and then usually Ana Luisa and I have a little time to talk about how wonderful our guests were, and we add that at the end. But I'll just do my own. But just really again, thank you for showing up, and
Thank
I look
you.
forward to more
Thank you
conversation
so
and
much. I really
learning more
enjoyed
about.
speaking with you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you.
Enjoy. Have a great
Okay.
day.
Thank you very
Bye.
much. You too. Take care.
Bye. Thank you for joining us today. Please stick around after the credits for our afterthoughts, and it helps our numbers if you stay until the end. We want to thank my children, Nate, Vivian, Nina, and her fiance Asher, for the excellent opening song, and a special thanks to our awesome editor, Sam Zemke, who is also a guest on our podcast. You can listen to him on Season 4, Episode 5. Also, thank you to Charles Heaston, the composer of the original music you are listening to now.
And of course, thanks to you, our audience, and all of our amazing guests. Please come back next week for another great episode. Share this with your friends, family, and community. We hope you will subscribe and follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Blue Sky, and Substack. Each guest's additional information will be found in the podcast notes. And of course, if you have a good end-of-life story to share, please reach out. We are always eager to hear from you.
Well, I wish Ana Luisa could have been here for that, and I know she's going to enjoy the recording. What an incredible person, and we again are so blessed to meet another amazing person out there doing this work. And I love the fact that she really spoke to the difference between hospice and palliative care, how important hospice is. And one thing we've been thinking about a lot lately is how important it is for people to really consider hospice as not giving up, and as not and getting into palliative care, getting the resources that are available to you and that you deserve at the end of your life. So don't ever think that going into hospice or going into palliative care is some kind of failure on your part. It's so important to just take advantage of those. if you go into hospice and you live for 6 more months and they say, well, you got to be out of hospice, you've had 6 months of incredibly wonderful care by angels who know their work and do a really good job. So much love to all of you, and adios. Take care.